Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss reports of Farage essentially backing up something I've said for a while. He's going to prioritise the US elections over those in the UK, because obviously that's what a British patriot would do. But how does this influence the thinking in terms of general election timing? Because there's now a lot of understandable discussion about what the Tories do now to rescue their poll rating for the general election and when that election will be. But I'd like to discuss the Farage factor in all this. Because despite Sunak claiming that the local elections show a hung parliament, which the Times seemed happy to promote on their front page today, everyone actually knows that Labour are on for probably their biggest win in history. The Tories are now stuck in a proper doom loop. More credible reports are talking about how Sunak has backed out of a summer election, which does somewhat give the game away that that's what they were planning. But the situation is this. The Tories could well be beaten into third place. That is on the cards if they cannot narrow the poll gap during the election campaign itself. And although they definitely have a lot of dirty tricks planned, they can't guarantee it will work. After all, they had a dry run with the London mayoral elections. Quite a lot of their digital campaigning was actually sickening, but it didn't work. Arguably, it hardened more anti-Tory attitudes than it did pro-Tory ones. So the Conservatives are now waiting for a miracle. Can't go to have an election with the polls in the state they are. Have to wait for them to get better. What if they never do? They think that the Rwanda plan and better economic news will improve their reputation over the summer. What if it doesn't? What if it just helps Reform UK eat even more Tory votes? They may delay again, waiting for a miracle. This is how you end up with the January 2025 election. I don't think that's likely, because even if the polls don't improve for the Tories, I can talk more about that in another video. I'll just say that I think something the Tories actually want to delay until after the presidential election because a Trump win might boost them. I'm not sure that's true. I can see some logic, but the impression I get is the Tories are focusing internally. They're just waiting for a miracle. Besides, a Trump win means needing to tack closer to Europe. Trump's not popular in the UK, even amongst Conservatives. He's popular amongst the Reform UK crowd, but not really across the country. And very few believe the Tories are equipped to deal with another Trump presidency. Besides, could the Tories trust Trump not to endorse Reform UK for his best mate, Nigel Farage? No, I think the Tories are entirely focused on domestic polling, not international events. Who knows? But for now, I'll just say that I think if the Tories really are scared of Nigel Farage, and many genuinely seem to be, late October or November wouldn't be a bad time to hold the election because the so-called foghorn of ignorance won't be gracing our shores. I said some time ago, I think the reason he was being coy about taking a leading role in the general election is that he doesn't want to miss out on the big bucks and ego trip of being the support act for the orange one during the US presidential campaign. He missed out last time due to COVID. No way he's turning down a massive payday for the sake of politics. And now the Telegraph are reporting that Farage has said that the US presidential election is more important than the UK election. He said he wasn't ruling anything out, but that the biggest election in the world is the US election, which is true, but the biggest election for any individual is always the one taking place in their own country, which does somewhat give the game away that Farage has no real emotional ties to Britain, despite what he may say. But if we look at the polling, the real polling, not the stuff made up by a professor on the telly who I'm sure is very clever in their own area of expertise, but has absolutely no background in statistical analysis, we can see that the Labour vote share is very stable, and it has been for well over a year. Labour are essentially just tinkering right now to shore up the votes in their target seats, maybe with more of an eye in Scotland because there's more flux with the SNP there. The major movement is between the Conservatives and Reform UK. Nigel Farage is Reform's star player, is their only star player, quite frankly, and is currently on the bench. If he gets onto the pitch, there's good reason to believe he could give Reform a boost. So now that he's confirmed that he will, well, he's all but confirmed, you can never take anything he says at face value, that he's going to chase the dollar signs, the Tories could absolutely see the presidential race as a window where Farage is out of the picture, with the exception of the odd video message of support for reform from his American hotel. So I could see the thinking. There are just a couple of problems with it. The first is that although I can believe that Farage would boost support for Reform UK if he led them in the election campaign, I think other factors may be collectively more important. An election in October or November means a squeeze on the cost of living crisis because people are mindful of the heating. You know, do you have the heating on? Do you turn it down? If you don't think you can afford to turn the heating on, you're cold, you're not in a good mood. It's a naturally more pessimistic time of the year in general. There's a reason governments almost always hold elections in spring. The Rwanda plan will be in operation but failing. Sunak will have nowhere left to go. The Brexit standards controls will be causing problems for food and medicine supplies and raising prices again. The government think the inflationary impact will be low, but that remains to be seen. Essentially, Reform UK could boost their support just as much with the passage of time as Farage would give them if they held the election sooner. And Reform UK, they've got a realistic ceiling of support. We often talk about where is the Tories' floor of support. Reform UK have a ceiling. If they reach it, just with all the shit that's going to happen in the next 6 months, Farage's impact would be lessened anyway. The second thought is that if the Tories fixate on Farage as if he's some all-important factor, what happens if the polling is at ground zero come early October? If they delay again, they're into winter, and then they get all of the extra problems with winter, NHS crisis, crap weather, Tory activists not wanting to bugger up their Christmas or winter getaway plans, as well as the fact, I mean, Tory members, it's not a urban myth or anything. The average age of Tory members is well into retirement. Knocking on doors in January, what? Or even December, it's a tough ask, particularly when you're on for a hiding. As well as Nigel Farage coming back to the UK in time to play a leading role in the campaign after all. I mean, when would you think the Tories could credibly call an election at this point? It's like, I get how they don't want to call one now because they've just suffered a hammering in the polls. And the real polls say that they could be beaten down to like 32 seats. So you wait until after summer, hoping that something improves. But let's say people have a few queries about why the Rwanda plan is in operation, but we still have record channel crossings. Whatever benefit the Tories got from their pretend tax cuts, that'll have worn off after summer as the cost of living crisis feels more real as we head into autumn. And whatever benefits any tax cuts did give, they're now baked into their everyday finances. That's no longer new. It's no longer shiny. So the polls are in an even worse state. So they delay again. They go to the conference. Sunak stands up for his big speech early October. He was intending to call the election there and then, but let's say the polls are their worst ever, which is possible. What does he do? Call the election when the polls are at the worst they've ever been, or delay again, knowing that things will definitely be even worse over winter. What few activists they still have will abandon them, and Nigel Farage will be back from America with a big sack of cash and an orange makeup on his collar. You know, I'll maintain my view that the Tories would have done better to have held the election as early as possible. Ideally last May, never mind this May. The longer they delay, the worse they make it. If they fixate on Farage, they make it worse still. Timing the election for just after the US elections, that might take him out of the picture, but it risks making things worse in other ways. Like whether a Biden or a Trump win, I don't think voters see the Tories as being best placed to deal with either. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.